Hello, hello, hello. Welcome.
Hello.
Right. I just need to get your video up.
Apparently, I can't start my video until you've allowed me to start it.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because,
What does it
oh
say
dear.
here?
Trust me to have a technical glitch in moment one.
You can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can sort that out. Welcome to everyone who's here. And
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you absolutely fine.
Yes, yes.
I'm not sure why I cannot see you.
The voice in the ether. Maybe someone can send us a message on the Q&A on how to do it. There's usually a button somewhere saying allow videos to be started. Somewhere along those lines. You see, that's what happens when you're not allowed to do something. You see, we get frustrated, we get angry, we get.
Can I ask you to log out and log back in?
Okay.
And let's see if that solves the problem. Come out and come back in. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing there now?
It says the same thing. Unable to start video. You are the host now.
So if you're the host now,
yes, the
you
light's
should be
on.
able to
There we
start your
go.
video now. Fantastic.
There we are.
Okay, guys, we're back. We're on track. Great. Thank you. Talika, thank you for telling me that you can see us. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, and you can see both of us. That's great. That is absolutely brilliant. So that's exactly what we need. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our video and our webinar on physician burnout and firefighting. And thank you very much, Linda. Thank you. Thank you for letting us, thank you for letting me know that my incompetence has been mitigated.
Zoom
Welcome
competence.
to the webinar. Right. So I'm just going to do that for a second and say, I hope everybody's day is going really well. It's only 3 minutes past 7, and I know we all get really busy. And we had quite a few people sign up for the webinar. So that's really great news. So I just want to give them a few minutes to check in before we really get started. In the meantime, welcome everyone. There's one person, I think, from my homeland Barbados. Yay! Thank you for coming. Now, we've got a nice varied bunch on today. We've got GPs, we've got surgeons, we've got non-physicians, which is really exciting because I thoroughly believe this fighting physician burnout is going to be a many-pronged attack. It can't just be coming from us. And I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this evening and believing in the vision and mission of Doctors Caring for Doctors to getting ourselves and as many of our colleagues away from feeling stressed and disconnected and demotivated to feeling relieved, refreshed, focused, and inspired again. And I'll just do a quick introduction about myself. I'm Pauline Morris. I'm a practicing anesthetist and I'm a personal development coach and a career coach. And it is my mission to help all doctors and doctors-to-be discover how to have a rewarding career and a happy life without burning out, whatever that means to you. And I have taken this journey myself, so I'm talking from a place of personal experience as well. I've been a medical educator, a senior staff appraiser, and a leadership consultant. And I can tell you for a fact, don't believe it. You don't have to do it all to be a great physician. You can take time for yourself. That's why we're here today, to talk about these things. You can enjoy being you and putting your energy into what you want to do. That is both professionally and personally, and that is possible even now. Right. So I really hope we're going to have an insightful and hopeful conversation. We've got some great questions from our participants when they registered, and we'll go through those in the second half, and we'll do some discussions around that. And for the first half, we are going to be talking with the amazing Haidar Al-Hakim, the third eye doctor. I'll let him tell you more about that. He's an amazing published author.
How long's the first half, Pauline?
It's all you don't worry about it. I'll do the moderating. You do the talking.
I'm getting worried here. I'm thinking,
Oh,
what?
don't get worried. I'll take good
5
care of
minutes
you.
is enough for me.
I don't get worried. I'll take care of you. Let me finish giving your accolades. Yeah. He's a published author, physician on fire, hence the name of today's podcast. And you can see he's a bit troublesome. He's a coach. He's host of the Surgical Spirit podcast, which I had the pleasant honor of being a guest on. He's an ophthalmologist because, yes, he's a physician by trade. And quite frankly, he's an all-around great guy and an amazing
Oh,
firefighter.
you
Yes,
are
he
way
is.
too nice. You don't
Oh,
really
I'm not
know
done
me.
with you yet, right? And I'm very pleased that he's joined the Doctors Caring for Doctors community to tell us all about what he's been doing, what he's been up to. Tell him about this amazing book. And I personally think the book is amazing. I'll tell you what my favorite bits are a bit later. But over to you, Dr. Haidar.
Well, you've done all the work now. I just need to sit here and sort of bask in the glory. It's already been done. What's the special kind of greeting in Barbados? So when you meet another Barbadian, what do you guys say?
Well, it depends on who you are. I mean,
Oh,
if and how familiar you are with the person. It could be anything from a scream from across the road to just a nod,
mm,
or it could be my favorite is
really, really. So if you saw another Barbadian sort of doctor, you just sort of like, yeah, like
well,
that.
any Barbadian really doesn't need to be a
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this whole concept around identity was a big issue for me, sort of growing up, because I was kind of, I mean, I don't know whether you know about the sort of the Iraqi psyche. The Iraqi psyche is that if you become a doctor, that's it, you're successful. And if you
Mm.
don't become a doctor,
In fairness,
no.
that's a very West Indian mentality, and I'm sure many of us can that resonates with many of us and the families that we've come from, and that adds to the intensity of what it
Yeah,
means to be a physician, because it's not just about walking away from medicine. It's about what your family and what your friends will say
yeah,
about you walking away from medicine, should you choose to, or even if you express doubt at all.
yeah,
It's shocking, and people don't know what to say to you
yeah.
when you say, actually, I'm questioning my career in medicine and I'm not sure what my next steps are, and I'm not, and God forbid you say something like, oh, I'm not sure I want to be a consultant.
Yeah. It's like, what the hell are you doing? You sort of you're climbing the mountain.
Mm,
You can't stop halfway. So yeah, I mean, I was essentially kind of groomed to be a doctor, so to speak, from a young age. And my dad kind of didn't get to the top. He became a zoologist, a marine biologist. So at the back of his mind, it's like, I didn't get there. This son damn well will get there. I'll sort of do whatever I can to get this young boy over the line. And I remember, what was I? I was probably about 11 at the time, and he bought me this medical physiology book, and I didn't understand. I'm sorry. I mean, excuse my language. I didn't understand what the fuck this was about. And then he wrote sort of in Arabic as well. So I mean, I'm in the UK, and he writes in sort of eloquent Arabic, which is difficult as well. So like the pressure is like it's all there. It's in Arabic. It's a complicated medical. I think it was pathophysiology, and I didn't have a clue. And I was 11 years old, and he wrote,
wow.
yes, to be
Pressure
so like, the pressure is on.
from day one, really.
Yeah. Plus, my surname Al-Hakim means, like the doctor or the wise one. And our sort of family tree originates from a Persian doctor. So he was a famous Persian doctor, about 2.5 centuries ago, so 250 years ago. He was the Persian emperor's emir, physician, and then he sort of left that kind of lifestyle and became a physician for the people. So sort of Buddha-esque kind of
So really,
story.
this is in your blood from day one.
Yeah, so the pressure was on. But sort of my bloodline, we had my dad's uncle was a dentist. That was the only medic. Because we had a sort of quite a religious sort of line. Um, so that was the kind of whole, what can I say, flavor, or whole dress that we were clothed in, so to speak.
So tell me, how did that then impact? Because your book
Yeah,
is about physician burnout.
yeah,
Can you then say that all of this contributed? And I know it's from your personal experience of burnout as well.
yeah,
So can you say that this had its roots already
yeah,
long
yeah,
before you even became a physician, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just something that grew and grew as time went on?
yeah. I mean, probably failure is not the right word, but I was set up for failure or set up for burnout
Mm,
because of so much expectation and so much
right.
pressure from a young age. To a certain extent, you get used to the pressure. You get used to this constant kind of feeling inside that.
I'm going to take some notes here because I think this is really interesting.
Yeah. So you sort of, you're always in a state of anxiety, so to speak. I mean, at the time, I didn't feel, I didn't think it was anxiety,
Yeah, I understand.
but looking back, you're constantly at unease, which to a certain extent allows you to keep progressing. Because if there's always this sort of constant noise in the background, you're always finding way of moving forward with this constant uneasiness and sort of noise. So when things come along that's easy, you sort of just, you know, bat that away. And then the difficult stuff, you can overcome it because you're always constantly used to this kind of uneasiness. Having said that, I mean, we left Iraq because of our family. So, you know, I come from a political family. Actually, it's more religious, but then it turned political because our sect wasn't really part of the mainstream political establishment that was running the country. So we were persecuted because of our religious sect. And then, when you're persecuted, you go from a normal individual into a kind of political activist. You're not really a resistance fighter, so to speak. You're not born a resistance fighter, but you're put in these situations where you have to defend yourself, which means that your belief system, whatever it is, becomes very much paramount in your whole makeup. So
Mm.
I had this kind of religious belief system plus the professional belief system. So you've got two pressures there.
Were they in conflict?
Yes, because you've got science and then you've got religion, and sort of how do you bring them together? So that's a kind of more of a personal kind of dissonance that I had to deal with. But on a physical level, it's you're being persecuted physically by a political entity because of your belief system. So that props up your belief system to a certain level. So you become more extremist towards that belief system. Physically, you're being persecuted. So we had to leave Iraq. We had many, many members of our family imprisoned and executed because of just a belief system. For them, they perceived this as a threat to their establishment. I mean, most of us weren't threatening. We're just sort of your sort of average Joe person, who happen inside not to agree with the establishment, but you know, we don't go around blowing up people and so on.
The thing
So
is,
you,
though, Haidar, you said it was a very personal thing, that your belief system was in conflict with your professional system.
yeah,
But I believe that actually, even for physicians who may not be religious or even spiritual, uh, have this problem, because we're taught as physicians that when we walk into the hospital, that everything that we are and everything that we believe in, we must drop it like a cloak
yeah,
at the door of the hospital, and then we all walk in and we sort of become these cookie cutter robotic
yeah,
doctors that bring none of who we are to the profession that we do. And I don't know how our attendees feel about this. You can drop a note in the
yeah,
chat
yeah. You know, they want
or
us to
the
turn into
Q&A.
cyborgs, so to
But
speak.
yeah, so I'm not, I know you said it was personal because your instance was so specific, but I think it is a major cause of moral injury for us as physicians. And the ability to look inwards to find the resilience that we need to do our job well is, as you said, we're set up to fail because we're told that who we are doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you know, this whole medical system is sort of set up from the start. So where, you know, as students, and even before going into medical school, there is a particular culture.
Tulika said so true.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you, Tulika.
you know that we're sort of
I hope I'm
in
pronouncing that right. Sorry.
Tulika, yeah, we're sort of inculcated with this notion that this is the system, and which is very descriptive, very so-called scientific, very protocolic system, and yet when we kind of go into the real world, it's all a bit chaotic and all a
Yeah,
bit of a mess and all a bit human-like. It's like, well, do I approach this as a human being, which is what I am outside the professional sphere, or do I approach it in with this sort of professional um, um, indoctrination that we're receiving, throughout our education, from a very young age, pre-medical school, medical school, and post-medical school. So, there is that constant conflict. And I guess for me, I've always been in this state of internal conflict, this sort of constant anxiety of coming from the East, coming to the West, from religion into sort of secularism. Um, uh, I mean, I'm sort of conservative with kind of leftist activist sort of flavor as well. So, I mean, I guess I was used to this kind of constant conflict, and being young and being energetic, you can kind of cope with that constant
for a while.
anxiety, but then you reach a breaking point. You reach a breaking point, and I mean, for me, my whole kind of utopia was to get my medical education and then go back to Iraq when it was safe enough, to help the Iraqi people. And that happened in 2003, with the dismantling of the previous regime. And I remember I was in theatre at the time. I was in Barnet Hospital in theatre with my consultant, looking at the statues coming down. And I thought to myself, I need to be there, because this is what I've been groomed to be, so to speak. And I spoke to my
Is that
consultant.
something you really wanted to do, or was that something that you felt was your responsibility to do?
At the time, this was it. 100%. This was my passion, my purpose, my identity. Everything inside me was saying, yes, this is what you need to do. And it was very natural.
And how did it feel when you were actually able to do that?
It was good. It was amazing. I mean, I went back to Iraq in 2004, where there was no government. And I remember I had to fly to Jordan, because that was the only way you can get into Iraq. And the borders were closed. And there were 2 miles of lorries waiting to go in, but they'd closed the borders. So I went to I had to meet the general, actually. And, I introduced myself, and, he knew me from my family. And he said, like, what the hell are you doing here? You know, you're a target. You know, you shouldn't be here because there's lots of, um, you know, at the time that there's a whole thing about Sunni Shia. You know, I'm from this Shia sect, and you know, the Sunnis were controlling the Iraqi areas there. And they said, look, if we let you through, you probably won't make it alive. And I was like, no, you're letting me through. This is my life's work. You know, this is what I've been, this is what I've been waiting for. Anyway, somehow I persuaded him to let me through. So I went through, me and a driver. And then of course the car broke down, and it broke, yeah, and it broke down in Fallujah as well, which was a very dodgy area at the time. You know, American soldiers were being blown up and killed, and so our car was broken down in Fallujah, and we thought, shit, you know, this is the end. And then a couple of masked men came along, you know,
Oh
as
my
they
goodness.
do, and it's like, who are you guys? And you know, all you can do is actually own up, really. And it's like, well, da, 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 da. They looked at us and they thought, what the fuck are you guys doing? You know? What do you guys need? I said, look, we need to get the car fixed. We need some petrol. So they took us to this kind of, you know, warehouse, rundown farm actually, and they had a tanker full of gas which they'd stolen from the government.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a bit of a mess. So we got petrol from them. They fixed the cars, uh, you know, and these guys were sort of enemies, so to speak. And then they say, look, you know, we're helping you guys. We just want one thing from you, and that is to pray in, you know, one of the shrines in southern Iraq, which is where I'm from. And you know
Haidar,
that,
I know you made it to Iraq, and you did some really amazing work there.
yeah,
I'm gonna pull you forward
yeah.
I like this one. Oh, I'm gonna have to read this for everyone. With those experiences, stress in medicine must be a walk in the park. Uh,
Well, you know, I mean, you just need one
well,
toxic person that kind of fucks you up, and
so this is where I'm going to take you forward now, because I know you did some fantastic work in Iraq,
yeah,
and then you felt the need to come back.
yeah.
So my question is, at what point did you realize you were burnt out? Was it when you were in Iraq, bearing in mind that the stresses of medicine seem minor, or was it after you came back?
Yeah, so I mean, it was,
Realize you were burnt
yeah,
out.
I mean, I was in my ideal job. I just set up an eye hospital in southern Iraq, in my hometown, place of birth of my family. Um, but something was sort of telling me inside, Haida, this isn't for you. You know,
And this is in
something.
Iraq before you came to
Yeah,
the NHS.
yeah. This was in 2012. So, you know, I pretty much sold up in 2010, doing my work, you know, having, you know, whatever you want to call it, a good time. And something inside me saying, this isn't for
Something's
you.
not quite right.
This isn't for you.
Is
And, you
is
know,
that
I
what
just became
anybody else is
miserable.
experiencing?
I
I'm
just
just
became
wondering
miserable.
from our attendees, is that what anybody else is experiencing? Is it just something's just not quite right? And now you're feeling a bit miserable.
Yeah. And I was becoming increasingly miserable. And then a friend of mine came over from the UK to my house. And, you know, when a friend says, look, there's something going on here, you know, you're not
Mm,
yourself.
mm.
And I said, yeah, you're right. You know, yeah, I'm not really enjoying this anymore. You know, I lost the faith. I lost my faith. I lost the passion. Um, this wasn't my purpose anymore. You know, this wasn't my metaphysical energy anymore. You know, it didn't talk to me anymore. Um,
What do you think was the biggest contributors to that feeling?
I think, you know, as you said, this kind of um, internal hypocrisy that I saw. Um, how can I say it? You know, they say this is how it's like, but it's
Mm,
not really like that. And you know, it's not really like that inside. And you couldn't really talk because you think to yourself, can I make a difference? I probably can't make a difference, so I'll just keep staying quiet. I probably would have made a difference, but I didn't have the courage to say anything. You know, I didn't have that yeah, courage. You know, I was not strong enough to speak, you know, to tell my family, look, this isn't for me anymore. And it took someone else to actually give me the courage. My friend suggested seeing a life coach, and I was like, fuck that, I'm not seeing a life coach, there's nothing wrong with me.
We know doctors like to seek help. We know doctors like to ask for help. And we know doctors are really good at recognizing when they need help. Yes.
It's like, no way am I seeing. It's like, mate, just I can see one, but here you are, here's the number. And I knew I had to do it because I couldn't carry on in this kind of continue in this situation. So yeah, I mean, I spoke to a really nice life coach who was in Canada at the time, and I think, you know, within 2 or 3 sessions, I was like, "Yep, got to get out," which was a massive shock for everyone. It's like, I
But you
thought
did
this
it.
is what you wanted,
Yeah. But
you
you did it.
know.
And then you wrote Physician on Fire.
Well, you see, I mean, I went from a position of certainty, which is right. I do A, B, C, and D, and I get my 70 virgins, you know, in the next life, to a position of uncertainty and sort of total darkness. So, you know, that was the difficult part, because I ended up sort of searching for years and years and years. Okay, if I'm not this doctor to
Then you
do
have no
this
idea.
job in Iraq, helping the people, I've done this all my life, right? So I mean, it took me about, I'd say, 3 4 years to sort of search. I did lots of things, and really, I mean, the book was kind of my pain, really. You know, wrote my
Wow.
pain. Yeah, I mean, it's all very painful experiences, but you know, I sort of put a put a lot of comedy into it as well. You know, sort of. I do like to laugh at myself. Uh,
For those of you who might not know what the book is, it's called Physician on Fire, and it's absolutely amazing. Ah, we can't quite see it
you can't
properly.
see it there. Yeah, yeah. There we
Called
go.
Physician of that's much better, and it is really beautifully written. And I think my favorite chapter is the one called I've forgotten what, because you have such funny titles for the chapter, but it's the one called Get something along the lines of Get On With It. You will get accustomed to it,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
about taking on those things that you know are good for you, but you avoid them,
yeah.
and finding ways around that, and actually improving yourself because you've made the decision to do what's good for you, and care for yourself in the way that you deserve to be cared for. I think that was my favorite
So,
chapter.
you know, I mean, the thing that I learned from that whole experience is actually to ask for help. And,
Mm.
it sounds very simple and it sounds very obvious, but it wasn't that simple and it wasn't that obvious for me. Um, but once you ask for help, then the floodgates open. Then there's a lot more questions that you have to answer. Whereas before, you didn't have to answer those questions.
Mm.
Whereas before, you didn't have to put yourself in these totally uncomfortable situations. And at a certain time, scary situation, because I was going from a kind of, quite insulated medical environment into a non-medical environment, because I had to look around elsewhere. I said, if medicine's not for me, what is for me? Um, so I went into hypnosis, I went into life coaching, I went into um, psychotherapy, and sort of eventually I sort of found that psychoanalysis was quite good, because it allows you to bring, particularly the Carl Jung side of psychoanalysis, analytical psychology, where you can bring in religion and mythology into the scientific sphere. So my underlying conflict, really, I mean, it all boils down to internal conflict. If you're able to resolve your internal conflict, a lot of these fires do get put out. So, the external conflicts are there. We all know what the external conflicts are. And to a certain extent, we can avoid them, but we can't avoid the internal conflict. And my internal conflict was, how can I bridge the metaphysical with the physical, the nonsensical with the sensical, religion and science. And it was through the whole concept around stories and the whole concept around how narratives, particularly mythological narratives, control a lot of our psyche. And I found it really fascinating that this has been looked at in the past, and there is a way forward. And now it's great because I can have both worlds now. I don't have to avoid or demean or put down one side over another. I can have both worlds. I can have the sort of mythological narrative world, as well as the cold, physical scientific world.
That's
um
brilliant. Yeah.
yeah, and sort of dealing with this internal conflict um helped me a lot. I mean, when I wrote the book, I was still unsure about it, whether it was useful or not, and I actually got really depressed when I wrote the book, because I thought it was um, a waste of time, basically, because of so much self-doubt and sort of being in that darkness and sort of being in this constant uneasiness and uncertainty. And then I sent out a few beta versions to a few friends, and I got an email back from a colleague who was contemplating suicide, read the book, and they said that you saved my life. And it's like these
Wow.
moments, these yeah, these sort of powerful moments where you think to yourself, wow, there is some benefit in this, even if it's just one person. um
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And I want to give our participants an opportunity to really get the concepts from you for putting out those big fires and those little fires. And we got some great questions there that I think would be really lovely for you to answer. And one of my favorite ones so far, I absolutely love this question. Um, to what extent do we set ourselves on fire?
so this is to do really with expectation and reality. And one of the biggest fires that we set ourselves up for and ignite ourselves for is actually expectation. The greater the expectations that we have, which tend to be social constructs from younger experiences, that develops our certain expectations of ourselves. And the greater the expectations, the greater the fire that you ignite
Yeah.
yourself with. And I think what the way to put it out is well, first of all, it gets hotter when your expectation doesn't match with the reality. So there is this mismatch between expectation and reality. So your expectation of being a consultant in the NHS is A, B, C, and D. And then the reality of the situation is, it's not A, B, C, and D. It's totally different to what you're expecting. That causes the fire.
Mm,
So then the next question is, can you change the reality? And in most situations is no, you can't change the reality, because then you're constantly batting against a physical wall, and you can't go through walls. I mean, you can fantasize about going through the walls, but you can't. So the next question is, how can you change your expectation? How can you change the mindset? How can you change your spirit? How can you change your body in order to accommodate to that reality? Now, this is where you get moral injury. This is where you get cognitive dissonance. This is where you get spiritual dissonance. Now, are you going to continue with that internal conflict, or are you going to resolve it? So the decision is really yours. Whether you change your expectation to the reality, whether you can change the reality at the same time, and can you make it fit? So it is a personal choice about how much you want to burn yourself. And I'm
mm,
not really into the whole notion that it's a sort of systemic or institutional problem. I think it's more of a personal problem. But this is a Western, this is a Western kind of viewpoint. But I think it starts with you first.
Well, that's interesting because
Yeah.
one of the questions that was submitted, and it's amalgamation of two questions and two comments was, so this follows on very nicely from what you just said. Physician burnout is due to organization culture and institutions don't listen. How do we shift responsibility from the individual for self-care to the organization slash society for caring?
You can't. You can't do that. I think it all starts with you. I think if you shift your culture,
Mm-hmm,
culture will then shift itself, because you will go towards the places that is congruent with your culture.
mm-hmm,
You can't change, you can't change the direction of the boat. It just takes too much time, too much effort, and you probably won't do it. The easiest route is actually to get off the boat, get on something smaller,
yeah,
and rebuild that boat. I mean, you can speak to the captain and try and persuade them, but they'll
mm,
come back to the same course as before, after about 10 minutes or a day. It is very difficult. And I think the more that people realize that culture doesn't actually change overnight or over years, it takes generations to change a culture. But what you can do is actually change your self culture. You
I
can change
agree.
your self
Yeah, I
culture.
agree with that. And part of I'll go a little further in that, where my ethos is, you know, revolution never starts from the top down. It starts from the bottom up.
Mm.
And it's up to us to make the decisions, to take the stand. And it's the stand that I took, and my mantra for those of you who would have been on my website or any of my social media platforms is, you don't have to do it all to be a great physician. You don't have to follow someone else's path. You can forge your own way. You don't have to be constrained by the institution that does not allow you to espouse your own values and beliefs. You can make a choice about where you decide to work and how you decide to work. And those decisions have been taken from us over the course of time. But it's clear that the persons above the foot soldiers who we are not making those decisions on our behalf. There's every report comes out. There was one in 2018, care for the doctors, care for the patients. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't think that it made any difference. The BMA did a survey recently that said 40% of GPs are trying to leave medicine. In the US, for anybody of my US colleagues out there, Medscape did a physician burnout and suicide report where 70, even before COVID, up to 80% of physicians, and they surveyed 12,000 physicians, said they felt burnt out even before COVID. So the system isn't working for us. And I believe that we have to make the system work for ourselves. And one of the steps in that is actually not waiting for someone else to give us that permission to self-care. And it kind of follows on nicely with another question from one of our attendees, which was, what was self-care look like? What does self-care look like to you? For me, self-care is literally putting on my oxygen mask first. And that may just mean actually just stopping, for me as an anesthetist, in between my two patients and saying, no, you can't send for the next patient. I need 10 minutes to pull myself together, to have a cup of tea, to do whatever. It doesn't mean, doing weird and wonderful things like meditating for 4 hours. It can be a simple thing like deciding today that you will be the one to walk the dog because you enjoy walking the dog. You're going to put down whatever work it is you're doing and go walk the dog or go mow the lawn or whatever it is that you choose to do. So what do you think about that? How
Yeah,
do you,
yeah. I mean, I
what does
totally,
self-care look like to
yeah.
you?
I mean, I totally agree. It's sort of bringing back the locus of control into yourself, so to speak. That you can actually decide for yourself rather than the locus of control being outside of you.
Mm,
Um, and listening to your insides.
mm,
If you're constantly listening to sort of outside things and influences and powers and antennas and so on, you'll constantly be be running around like a headless chicken, and it won't be a nice existence to be in. But learning to actually listen to your body, learning to listen to your instinct, all of these sort of soft things, rather than making it a cognitive thing. um make it more of a soulful thing, more of a intuitive thing, more of a creative thing. And the creative process is an unknown process, but what works for you to become creative. Like for me, I get very creative when I'm in the gym and sort of sweating. That's my most creative process. Now I can't do that in the clinical setting, sort of jump around like a headless chicken and sort of sweat all over the place. But I know that I'm more creative in those situations. Therefore, I sort of get out, you know, of the clinical situation, jump around. Obviously, you can't do that in emergency settings, but then you try and minimize the emergency settings. So, reducing your on calls and, reducing situations where you have very little say. So, the power is within you. And I think that's something that's worth championing amongst physicians, is that you do have actually a lot of personal power and a lot of personal control, which you can exercise, and what that means for you. And so it becomes a very personal experience and journey. And the thing about burnout is it is such a personal experience. It is such a personal journey, and we should go away from this sort of descriptive and protocolic kind of colic, so to speak.
So that brings us to another interesting comment question from one of our attendees, and I'll read it out. I hear a lot of clinicians describing how they are almost burnt out. How do we know when to call it? And this kind of tacks on to that one. How can you identify burnout in yourself and others? And is there a time when we're allowed to be burnt out? So we
Well,
can
I
go.
mean, the culture in medicine is that you're expected to be either burnt out, totally burnt out, and just kind of fucked up, basically. This is the culture. If you don't do 100 hours a week, there's something wrong with you. So, this is the default. Burnt out is the default within the system. And it's rare for us, for someone to be not burnt out. It's odd. It's odd. It's like, they're being themselves. This is a human doctor. you know I think, or as you said, being the shape cutter or the cyborg or the zombie. This is the default, and we're sort of, this is what's expected of us. Once we come out of that and start saying, well, actually, I want flexi, I want to do other things, I want to be myself, I don't want to see that patient, I have difficulty working, and we're a bit difficult, where we cause issues. And really what we're doing is actually radical self acceptance. First of all, we're accepting
Mhm.
ourselves, that this is a system that I can't fit into, or at least I need some kind of leeway or some kind of space or some kind of breathing space, which is not going to go well for the majority of people, because you are thinking about yourself. And we're supposed to work in a system which is not about thinking about themselves. It's about thinking about other things apart from
Everybody else
yourself.
and everything else. Yeah.
So, it is, but what they don't realize is that when you are yourself, you're your best self. You're your most creative self. And, we inherently are from a caring profession, because we have that personality within us that wants to just care for other people. So that comes to us naturally. um, Give us that space for us to be creative in this caring profession. And just like yourself, you realize that the more creative you are, the more caring you become. And then patients really, really relate to you, because you're being yourself. You're being that human person that gives the best form of healing, rather than the medicine or the facility or the particular equipment. Because that's the biggest form of the healing process.
Agreed. Or I love the chat that we've got going here. It's absolutely fantastic. And just in
Yeah,
case
it's all Roshni's fault. I know. Yeah.
just in case we're not keeping up, it's just fantastic. Mike, I think it was talked about having solidarity, and that's a big thing, I think, because as an anesthetist, it's one of the things that I decided to take ownership of and control of. And that was taking care of my team. And I did very high octane theater list. I did emergencies and traumas and obstetrics. I didn't do any lumps or bumps or anything like that. And it meant that we had the sickest patients, and then, we'd have the vascular, and everybody would be crumbling to bits by the time they got on the emergency table. And sometimes it didn't go well, and people needed a break. And it was very, very rare that we did not have time in between patients to just stop, take a moment, take a breath, check in on, have a check in on everybody, make sure everybody's can have a cup of tea. We have a moment to cry if we need to, because we did do some crying in that, and I made the decision and said, no, I'm not going to let people rush us through this, because I want us to be able to function. And that meant caring for the team. And I got it back tenfold, because my team always cared for me. And, it's, Mike says it again, it takes a village to care. And there's a balance in that care for a kindness. And I like that. It's a clinical intervention. It's fantastic. I love it. And I think that's one of the things that we are not taught. You, on a couple of things, you said we must know ourselves. And as physicians, I don't think that we're given that permission to know ourselves. When I coach my clients, one of the first questions I say to them is, what do you want out of life? Who are you and what do you want out of life? And most times people start off with, well, I never thought about it. Or they go, well, I want to be a consultant, or I want to be this, or I want to be that in relation to their career. We're not encouraged as physicians to actually think about what it is that we want for ourselves. And it's a narrative that needs to change within medical training, with our medical students and our trainees, and it needs to change in ourselves and our more senior colleagues as well. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the notion that, I think medical education should be for the more, um, I guess, mature individuals who have gone out and experienced other things and sort of learn other things before they come into medicine. So whether that means, doing a first degree in something else, or sort of having worked in an industry that's unrelated to medicine. Just to sort of realize that medicine is just a small part of who you are, and you're much more richer than just Joe Blogs putting in the next treatment protocol for a patient. I do believe that the American system is quite good in the sense that you've got to have a degree, and then medicine is just like 4 years. And I think the less time they spend in the classroom, the better. I think they should have iPads with different sort of treatment protocols, and you just spend time with the patient learning the whole therapeutic relationship, and having a kind of apprenticeship like supervision, rather than being taught, so to speak.
so that brings us on nicely to
Am I doing this on purpose?
oh,
Coming to
come
the
on.
next question,
It's almost like you it's almost
Roshni. I'm
like
not
you
having a go at you,
multiple
Roshni.
times.
I'm not having a go at you, Roshni. I'm just
It's almost
singing
like
your
you read
praises.
your minds, because the next question
It's
following
not a setup, is it?
it's not a setup, I promise.
Bloody hell! Sounds
No,
like a setup.
no, I promise you it's not. And I love how this question is, again, it's an amalgamation, but I love how this question is worded. And this your book is about how to put out these fires within 30 days. And so here's your opportunity to put that in a nice little précis for us. How do you stop the rot when you're heading down that path? What is the best way to avoid it? Is it variety or is it rest?
it's sort of cutting the head off, so to speak. That's what you need to do. If something's rotting, cut it off. Go somewhere else. It is
Mm.
you've got to make that quick decision, instant decision. Right, this isn't right for me. I've got to look somewhere else. This isn't working for me. This job plan is not working for me anymore. Cut it off. Start anew.
Well,
So yeah.
that's all well and good for us working as consultants. What about our medical students? What about our
Well, to
trainees?
be honest with you, I mean, when I was training as an ophthalmologist, I was jealous of one trainee. Why? Because he said, "Look, I'm not doing this. This isn't working for me. I'd rather do it like this. This doesn't help me. This," and I was like, "Bloody hell, the guy's got balls. It's not working for him, and he gets what he wants." And I used to get really jealous of him. But now I realized this is the way forward, is actually to be a bit of an ass, think about yourself, cut the head off, and move forward with it. Otherwise, you'll continue to go down the pan until it's kind of too late, or it's too pathological. And I mean, that's what happened to me, because I sort of went on and on and on until someone pointed out to me, "Mate, something wrong here." And I could have denied it and sort of carried on down the route of decay, which is why it took me, a bit of time to kind of find my way back again. So I think if it's not working for you, you do need to stop it as soon as possible. And I'm not saying drop everything, but realize that this isn't working. Get support from someone that you trust and know. Get support from someone that's senior. If that doesn't work, go and see someone. So but you made that ultimate decision that this thing is not working for me. I need to change. And it is that quick decision
Hmm.
that things have to change from today.
Yeah. So if you had to give us your top three firefighting tips.
Top three firefighting tips is uh, get out. Doesn't necessarily mean you leave the organization, or you leave the profession, or you leave this, but change the environment. Whether that means going out into nature, spending time more outdoors, seeing friends, seeing non-medical friends, doing things that's sort of unrelated to medicine. So get yourself out of that environment in order for you to kind of change the way you think, change your perspective, change your outlook, change your mindset. So that's the first thing, is sort of get out. The second thing is, think about the whole concept of creation. When are you most creative? What does creation mean to you? Rather than being a consumer, think about the whole creation process. What does creation mean to you? What are you creating? What are you making anew? What is something that you're growing or developing, or bringing out of nothing? So think about your own creative process. What does that mean to you? Because it allows you to change the way, it changes your situation. It gets you out of your funk. So that's the second thing. Think about the whole creative process. Um, and then thirdly, which we didn't really talk much about, is actually fun. You know,
Let's do that now.
yeah. I mean, what is it? What's fun for you? I think the more you involve the whole fun process, and for me, fun means telling the naysayers to f you. So f you naysayers. And naysayers is more of an internal thing than an external thing. So it's
Mhm.
sort of this internal naysaying that you go through, that stops you from creating, stops you from getting out, and stops you from having fun, is because you have these expectations that people will do all sorts of, or say all sorts of things to you, or sort of that is not nice. It's you've got to have the whole fun process, and if you can bring all those three things together, you'll be surprised about how quickly you can uh put out your
Put out
fires.
some fires. So change your environment or change your perspective. get creative, and have some fun. And it's really interesting as physicians how hard all three of those things are. And the one I'll pick on for a little bit is the fun one. I had a client that said to me, one of my problems is I don't have a hobby. I don't have a great hobby. And I said, well, what do you mean by a great hobby? And she's like, I know people who go rock climbing and base jumping. And I said, okay, that's fine. What's the definition of a hobby? What's your definition of a hobby? And she said, well, it's something you do just for fun. And I said, okay, well, fine. Some time back, you said to me that you really enjoy going to the gym. And that's what made me think of it when you were speaking. You talked about creativity in the gym.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it and it's really good. And I said, well, how is that not a hobby? And she said to me, but that's not a great hobby.
Yeah.
I look around and people have great hobbies. And it's really funny how what we've been taught about to believe ourselves. Everything we do must be exceptional, and we must be exceptional at everything we do. If you have a hobby where you knit, you must knit the biggest Afghan in the world. If you breed dogs, you must be making loads of money out of it. As a doctor, we don't understand that it's all right to just enjoy whatever it is you enjoy.
Yeah.
And a small thing is still self-care. Going back to that question about how do you do self-care. And it's really great to hear you say that you just need to have fun, and fun is literally what you want it to be. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. I mean, I wrote my book actually in the gym. That's how I wrote the book, because I knew that was when I was most creative. It's sort of totally, what can you say, non-traditional or unexpected. But then that's where the good stuff is when expectations out the window, and it's totally, yeah, weird and wonderful.
Fantastic. Okay, so we were lucky enough to be able to get through all the submitted questions. So we're just coming up on the hour. And as physicians, we know that we all need to honor our time. So,
It's gone
last
so quickly.
it does, it really does. Last ditch effort. Are there any final questions? Anybody want to raise their hand, drop a comment, put something in the Q&A box before we start shooting off? Thank you so much. Mike says, enjoyed that. Thanks all. Talika said, it's been so much fun. Thank you. So
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Thank you, Paul. That was great. Thank you.
Paul, sorted, Paul, sorted.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. So I think that'll be our
Yeah, fun.
I like
you to the internal naysayer.
the internal naysayers. Brilliant. Any final last words of wisdom?
Well, as you said, coming together, I think, if we can all come together and sort of support each other and pat each other on the back, and just have each other's backs as we sort of navigate through these uncharted waters for all of us. They are interesting times. So I think, if we can all support each other, I think that'll make a big difference for us all.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, I mean, we lost quite a few people there, but I know an hour is a long time for us to commit to anything, pretty much, if we're not at work. So I really hope you enjoyed the webinar. And we are going to change the narrative. We are going to stop separating who we are from what we do. We're going to focus on wellness and well-being, physically, emotionally, mentally, personally, and professionally. And I really hope that you're up for achieving this paradigm shift about what it means to be a great doctor. I truly believe you can have a rewarding career and a happy life. Last but not least, thank you, Haidar. It's been wonderful. You're such a breath of fresh air. And I'll see you all next time. Remember to check out both Dr. Haidar and myself on our social media platforms. Mine is easy, Doctors Caring for Doctors. Haidar, where can we find you if we need to? For
LinkedIn, and also my podcast, Surgical Spirit Podcast.
Oh, yes, of course. Surgical Spirit Podcast, where we had our brilliant introduction to each other. So thank you, everyone, for attending. I really appreciate you being here. And oh, thank you, Amanda. Love this. That's great. And that's what I was hoping for. I didn't want it to be too heavy, because physician burnout is a pretty heavy topic, and we can, get a little
Yeah,
about
no,
it.
no, we can both smile about this,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So,
okay. It's okay to
okay,
smile
guys.
and laugh.
All right, guys. See you
Take care.
later.
Thank you.